Okay, we're 2 minutes past the hour, so I'll go ahead and kick things off. Thank you everyone so much for joining today's webinar on Provar Manager, end-to-end software quality management for all. I'm excited to bring this to you all today. As always with our webinars, for those of you that haven't joined or haven't been to one of our webinars before, please feel free to at any time drop a question into the Q&A function in Zoom, and we'll have plenty of time left over at the end to cover any and all questions that you may have. We have a pretty jam-packed webinar today, so I'll go ahead and get started. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Daly. I'm the Director of Technical Product Marketing here at Provar. I've been with Provar now for about 5 years, and I'm excited to bring this webinar to you all today to talk more about how our quality management solution, Provar Manager, can bring you value to your different teams. And we'll get into a demo, and then we'll have time for Q&A at the end. This is our agenda for today. So as always, I like to begin with what our problem statement is. So a brief understanding and a context around what the quality lifecycle is. And we'll introduce Provar Manager, what the features and capabilities of it are. Talk about how it can help your individual team members from a persona basis, and then get into a demo and the Q&A. So first of all, what is the quality lifecycle? When we say that, you may have heard of the software development lifecycle. The quality lifecycle is really the perspective of the SDLC from a quality side of things. So thinking about more along how we can manage quality for our entire software development lifecycle. So some of the common challenges that we often see in the quality lifecycle, these are just kind of industry-wide, right? So fragmented testing processes. Often testing activities are spread across various different platforms and tools, which can really lead to inefficient processes and missed defects overall, because you end up using different tools to test different systems. They all have different ways of gathering information and reporting on those defects. The second one that we often see is the lack of collaboration. This is one of the more common issues, and devs and QA teams often struggle with communication and collaboration, which results in delays in projects and release times, and also just misaligned objectives. Devs tend to have this process that I've heard from various different users at events and otherwise, that they kind of throw their changes over the wall, and then the QAs are tasked with testing and ensuring the quality of whatever the devs have handed off to them, right? So there's really not a lot of collaboration in that process. Another problem that we often see is that there's really inconsistent standards for quality. What defines quality? How do we know if something is ready to release? Without a unified approach, maintaining consistency and consistent quality standards across all your different projects and releases can become very challenging. So different projects and apps that all have their own standard of excellence, there really is no source of truth, right? Who's the kind of the arbiter of this? And then the fourth problem that we see is there's a reliance on all these manual processes, not just manual testing, but manual processes in the entire software development lifecycle can really slow down your release times and increase the likelihood of human errors, right, in the process. So we want to eliminate that. And then the last problem that we see is there's a difficulty in tracking and reporting. And really what this results in is there's a lack of visibility, and in quality metrics, and getting good quality metrics out of your system can be very cumbersome without having a centralized approach. So a question that you might ask yourself is, where can I find the latest results or number of defects for our latest release? If you can't answer this question easily, or it involves multiple solutions, then there could be an area for improvement for you here. So I've presented you with these challenges, right? So what are kind of the solutions for that and at a high level? So we're looking at this as a centralized quality approach. So rather than having fragmented processes, we talk about having processes that are more streamlined, which involves integrating all of your testing activities into a single platform, which enhances, of course, your operational efficiency. It reduces the risk of oversights, and there's now a source of truth for all things quality. Everyone goes to the same point of origin for this. And we talked about collaboration being an issue. So improving on collaboration really fosters better communication and collaboration between the dev and QA teams, which results in aligning them towards the same common goals. So they have the same standard for every application and project that they're working on. Having quality standards that are consistent across your business definitely can help from a testing perspective as well, because it helps you have a uniform level of quality across all of your different projects. And we talked about manual processes and manual testing being a bottleneck. There's a lot of automation that we can take advantage of here, not just from the testing perspective, but also through integrations, platform automation, flows inside of Salesforce, and so on. So all these kind of things can help us automate the process to eliminate manual errors and manual bottlenecks. And the last one here is really just getting us into a more comprehensive tracking and reporting platform that gives us visibility into the entire testing process, which enables more data-driven decision-making. So you want to be able to look at the data, have good visibility of all the data, and make good decisions based on that data. So being able to have it in a centralized dashboard and being able to tell what the latest status is of your tests enables you to do that. So I've outlined kind of the problem area, the problem space. So now I'd like to introduce Provar Manager. So Provar Manager is a quality hub. That's what we refer to it as. And really what we mean by that is it's a centralized hub that helps you manage all the aspects of your software development process. And really there's 3 different applications that comprise Provar Manager. The first one is test management. This is where we give you the ability to define and organize test plans so you can ensure proper coverage and testing visibility across all of your different testing processes and your user stories and things like that. The next one is test operations. So as you might think, this is focused more on the operational side. So how do we schedule test cases? How do we report on them? How do we eliminate manual intervention? And also, how do we track code quality metrics using Code Analyzer and static code analysis tools? The last application here is really focused more on the front end, and this is release management. So any of you that are familiar with different project management and release management tools such as Jira, this is similar to that, right? Where it's giving you the ability to manage all of your different artifacts from epics, user stories, releases, and sprints in more of a centralized way, and also being able to relate those things to what you're doing from the testing side of things. So being able to relate user stories to test cases and so on. So what does this look like in a realistic world? We talked about Provar Manager being a quality hub. And really what we mean by that is there's Provar Manager in the center, and that's your hub. And all these different endpoints, all these different touch points are your spokes on a wheel, right? So Provar Manager being the central hub that integrates with and interconnects all of your different software development lifecycle data points and your testing and QA touch points. So from the initial phases of planning, design, with tools such as Jira and Azure DevOps, to the development phase where you're focused on testing, automation, and Apex tests and things like that. Being able to import all of that into a testing framework is essential to being able to really connect all these different data points and get insight into them. Then, of course, there's integrations with tools such as Flowsum, Copado, and DevOps Center, which provide intelligent testing so we can know what's being tested, how we should test it, and what's being done from the development side of things, and also reporting, such as reporting on user stories, work items, and branches. At the end of the cycle, or at the end of the first cycle, because it's an iterative process, you'll be able to analyze and gain valuable insights into your development process through integrations such as PMD, Clayton, and different coverage metrics, which utilize inbuilt Salesforce reports and dashboards and our out-of-the-box Salesforce reports and dashboards that we have with Provar Manager. All in all, you can really think of Provar Manager through the power of Salesforce has the integrations and the reporting capabilities to provide you a holistic view of the quality of your software development lifecycle, rather. So how can this help your individual teams? When we break this down by personas, the first one that we're looking at is really system admins and business analysts. So these are the couple of the pain points that you might see if you're in one of these roles. By providing a one-stop shop for all your QA needs, this really simplifies the process and the grunt work for these particular users wanting to improve their testing processes internally. And by taking advantage of Salesforce's native reporting capabilities, Manager has numerous out-of-the-box quality metrics that can help you for tracking purposes and help you keep track of where you're at in the process. The next persona that we'll talk through is testers. Obviously, this is a bit of a favorite of ours because we are a testing company and we're focused on quality. But really, Manager's main objective is to integrate testing into the software development lifecycle, but also to do it seamlessly. So QAs are no longer operating on their own little island of bugs, right? They're really an integral part of the entire process, and Manager helps accomplish that. Also, defect reporting and syncing to other systems of report is paramount to adoption, and exploratory testing is one such feature that can help QAs identify bugs faster and report on them to the development team with the steps to reproduce with screenshots and videos and things like that. The next persona that we'll talk through is from the development perspective. Now, being an engineer in a past life, I tend to favor developers and want to make their lives as good as we possibly can, right? Developers tend to be happier when they have a clear focus of what to fix and a fair timeline to fix it. So by shifting testing left and by embedding quality into the software development lifecycle, testing can help us improve turnaround times for bug resolutions, which on all makes everyone happier. Code coverage and other metrics are increasingly important for development teams who want to improve their release cadence through these types of insights. So I'll show you what those look like when we get into the demo in a little bit. Now, visibility, you'll hear me say this numerous times throughout today's webinar, and visibility is one of the recurring issues that we often hear being a problem from stakeholders and managers. Salesforce's reporting is best in class, and Provar Manager takes advantage of this fact with the built-in dashboards that we have to be able to provide you with a full quality report for all of your projects. And you may be asking yourself as a stakeholder, as a manager, when you're looking into different applications or you're looking at your projects as a whole, is what are our next steps? How do we get better, right? These are questions that you often ask. How do we improve our processes? The reason these questions are often very difficult to answer is due to the lack of data. You don't have a lot of insight into how things are going currently, so you don't know how to improve. So you can start by making data-driven decisions by adopting a fully fledged quality management framework that plugs into all of your existing standard operating procedures. So by integrating with all the tools that you normally use in your day-to-day, such as Jira and Azure DevOps and Copado and Flowsum, by having integrations readily available that are plug and play, this gives you the ability to quickly onboard Provar Manager and get full insight into what these tools are providing you with. Okay, so that's kind of an outline of Provar Manager, the problem space, what we believe Provar Manager is solving for these different personas. Now I'd like to get into a demo of the application itself. So first and foremost, I'll outline kind of what I'm going to show throughout the demo at a high level. So we'll start with release management, which is really, again, this is where everything typically begins when you're thinking about the software development lifecycle. You begin by focusing on what our requirements are, our design phase, defining our user stories, and things like that. So I'll show how this works from Provar Manager perspective. Then we'll get into the test planning and the test management phase, which is really defining what our systems under test are, how do we test all of our user stories, and how do we provide results and reporting on that. And then, of course, the operational side is the actual execution of the test plan. This is where we can schedule automation using our Provar Manager integrations with things such as Provar Grid, which is our cloud-based infrastructure for scheduling test cases. And then, of course, scheduling Apex tests and things like that as well. Okay, so let's get into a demo here. All right, so first and foremost, we'll go ahead and begin with release management. So this, again, is our project-focused application. This is where you would go to begin to import things like Jira projects, Azure DevOps projects, and this is also where you would import all of your issues from those various systems. The way that it works initially is you'll set up a connection to project, and then you'll import that from Jira. I already have a project that's been imported here, and I've imported several of my issues. I can show you basically what this looks like from the manager perspective, but you can see all of the different artifacts that we have from the Jira perspective as well across the top here. We also get valuable analytics such as user story coverage, which is a big thing. If you're looking at it from a Jira side of things, you want to know how many of your user stories are actually being covered in your testing process. So at a high level, we can look at this report here. We can drill down further into the report by clicking here. So if we go into our issues, we can import new Jira issues directly by selecting our project, clicking continue, and then we'll get a list of all the issues that are currently synced with Provar Manager and the ones that we haven't imported yet. So if we want to import some new issues, we can check on those and click import. And then now those will be synced between our Provar Manager application and Jira. So the reason that's important is because, again, we're saying that Provar Manager is our centralized hub. Jira is one of our spokes, and we're bringing that into the process. The reason that's important is because now we can relate our testing and our test cases to that Jira that we just imported. So if we look at one of our existing issues, for example, we'll click on this one here. This is what a user story may look like. We have this as a user, I should be able to do this. And that should be kind of how we define things from an agile way, right? Now, if we're wanting to test this particular user story, what does that process look like? It may look different depending on your team setup, how many users you have that you want to imitate, how many scenarios you're trying to cover by this particular user story, and also how you're actually testing it. Are you using automation? Are you using manual testing? So you want to be able to define that and report on it. The way that you typically do that may be different depending on your tooling, but with Provar Manager, actually generate some basic test cases that can get you started if you're not sure where to begin. So by utilizing our integration with OpenAI, we're actually able to define a list of fields that we want to populate the test cases with, and then we can define our format. So we can do a plain text format, which will just give us some basic test steps, or we can do BDD, which would give us the given, when, then kind of format for our test case. We can define how many test cases we want to generate at the outset, so I'll just do 5. And what this will do is this will run our Jira description, our assignee, our test plan environment through our integration with OpenAI and give us some test cases that we can generate and relate to this user story automatically. So once this list has been populated, we're able to create that relationship, and then we can begin implementing those test cases. So we'll go ahead and just select all these here and click Save. And now if we go into our Quality tab, we now have some related test cases that are initially in the draft phase. So they're in draft right now because they're not fully fledged test cases, but we need to go in and actually build those out. So we'll go into our test case here just to see what it looks like. So these are some test steps that have been created for us with some expected results out of the box, right? So it's basically, this is the action you're taking. This is our expected result. So if you're familiar with creating manual test cases, you'll be very familiar with what this looks like, right? If you're using Excel or anything like that. But being able to quickly do it using our integration with AI, this gives you a quick win to be able to define how you want your user stories to be tested. And we can even edit this existing test case and add some additional data in here. We can add additional steps, and we can delete things, attach screenshots, and things like that if we wish. Okay, once this test case has been defined, the actual implementation may look differently. We may just want to go through the process of handing this off to whoever's going to be testing it and say, here's our test case. And if you look at this step by step, this would actually be a pretty good test case. The only problem is we're not actually defining what the success is other than just creation of a record. So we may want to add some additional steps to validate that this record is being created appropriately, that any automation that happens after the record is created is being validated as well. But you get a good idea of how you should actually go about testing this particular user story. So that's kind of an overview of the release management application. Again, now we have a relationship between what we're testing and why we're testing it. So if we go back into our issue that this was related to, we can actually relate this to other objects as well. But this was our user story, and now we have all of our related test cases, of course. So now the next phase would be going into our test management application. So I'll switch gears a little bit and show you what that looks like. So test management is primarily focused on of course, as you might imagine, managing of your entire testing lifecycle. So this would include planning your test cases, planning your projects, defining how you want to go about testing a particular application, defining all of your systems under test, and of course, going through the process of executing those as well and reporting on them. So the Quality Center is kind of your beginning reporting dashboard, if you will, from Provar Manager that we provide you out of the box. And this gives you an overall view of all of the test executions. It breaks it down by status, by browser, by type, and of course, by operating system as well. And we can look at individual test environments here as well. So if we want to focus on dev, we can select dev, and we can see how dev is performing overall over time. Of course, this is just this week. So if we want to zoom out a little bit and maybe look at the month, we can see we get a little bit more data there. And we can also see a breakdown, like I said, by browser and operating system. And we can even scroll down and we'll get a little bit additional insights on test coverage, code quality metrics, and things like that, if we have any of that defined. The test project view is just another version of the environment view, except we're focused on individual projects that we've defined. So a test project would usually coincide with a release or an application that you're specifically testing, or maybe it could be a different business unit. However you want to define that is up to you. But if we look at our Provar Quality Pipeline project, this will show us an overview of this particular project over time. The test case management view is primarily focused on the number of test cases that you've defined. Are they automated? Which tool did you use to automate them? And who owns those test cases and what's their current status? So this will give you all that information at a glance. Of course, all this is pulled from all the various different custom objects and records that we have as part of Provar Manager. So that being said, there's actual reports and dashboards if you want to look at the specific data and drill down a little bit further. But this will give you a high-level overview of what this looks like in the quality center. The quality journey is another kind of dashboard that we have, but this is primarily focused on you as the tester, kind of your items that you need to be looking at. So this will show you anything recent that you've been interacting with. So there's my test cases that I was working on. These are test cases that are currently assigned to me and their status. Any failing test cases that belong to me that I need to maybe take a look at, and all of the latest test cycles that I've been executing. So this would be for the entire organization. This will show me the results of all those tests. And it'll also show you which tool and all of that was used to actually run these test cases. So we see a Salesforce icon here. This is actually Salesforce Apex tests that we've been scheduling. And then these are our Provar automation tests, and we can see individual environments here. We can look at these individual test cycles and drill down into the test plan and go a little bit further if we wish. So we'll actually take a look at this test plan just to show you an overview of what a test plan looks like in Provar. Across the top here is the completion tracker. And you can think about this as kind of our quality maturity. This will give you an overview of where you're at for that particular test plan and some things that you could improve. So you can see I haven't defined any risks here. I haven't really outlined our testing procedures, and I haven't defined any resources that this test plan, who's responsible to basically own it and implement it, right? So being able to define those things is important. So we give you some metrics to kind of track that. And if you're not sure where to begin or how to document these things to improve these, we actually have an AI assistant that walks you through the process step by step with some very good examples here on how you might want to implement each of these. If we look at the execution tab in the analytics, we get some further reporting for that particular test plan. So we can see the latest test results. We can see all of our test plan schedules that we've defined. And if we look into the analytics, we can see a daily report of all of our tests. And if we've defined any risks, we'd see how many of those risks were actually covered by test cases. And again, all of these are using our inbuilt out-of-the-box reports that we have available. So if we want to drill down a little bit further, kind of the next phase of this is, okay, now let's look at our operational side. So once we have our test plan defined, we have some schedules created, and we want to begin executing these test cases, right? So let's look at one of our previous test cycles here. We'll just drill down into this one. So a test cycle is basically just a test run. It's an iteration of a number of different test executions or test cases, and we can get insight into the suite that that test case corresponds to, the date, timestamp, of course, and then the overall status and the browser OS and all of that information. At the top here, you'll see some high-level statistics like the pass rate and the number of tests that were executed and all of that information. If we go into one of these test failures, we'll actually get a high-level analysis here. This is pulled directly in from the failure message. So this was actually a UI test that was executing, and one of the failures has to do with a particular field not actually being filled in accordingly. So we need to go and resolve this particular test case. But if we look at the results, this will actually show us a breakdown of all the steps in that test cases that was executed. And we'll be able to show a video playback to see what that test looks like whenever it was being executed inside of our browser. If we go to the actual point of failure, we can click on that test step, see what the failure message is very quickly, and we can also raise a defect directly from that test execution failure. The reason this provides value is now we can actually relate this defect directly to the test execution record, the test step, and the test case automatically. So we can say field not accepted on page. And we can define the status, the priority, impact, and all of that, of course. Once we raise this defect, it will be automatically linked to the test execution, as I said before. And the benefit of that is, of course, we'll be able to track and report on it. So we know that this test case has a bug associated with it. So if we run this in the future, we know that, oh, this is already something that's been reported to the team. So the development team can take a look at this. We can actually link it to a Jira. So we can directly link this to a Jira bug. So that way we have a sync between Provar Manager and Jira. So we're not reporting on two different systems separately, but wherever that report is happening, we can relate one to the other. So this keeps everything in line. As we said, Jira being one of those essential spokes in our wheel, we want to be able to sync that into the Provar Manager hub. So we can link that directly to a Jira here. And then once that's linked, we'll be able to create that relationship. Now I want to take a look additionally at some of our Apex tests to show you what that looks like from our perspective. So we'll go to one of our Apex jobs here and we'll take a look at this execution. So these were some Apex tests that we were running previously. So if we look at one of our execution failures, again, we can look at the results and we can see some defects that were raised. If there has been a defect raised, the test step that has that defect will automatically have this little icon here letting us know that it has a defect currently. So we can navigate to that defect. And of course, as before, we can link this to a Jira, but we can also generate a root cause analysis report directly from this defect that was automatically created from our Apex test execution. The reason this is valuable, again, we're utilizing AI to kind of generate this report, is because if we're not sure exactly why something may be failing, this gives us a little bit more insight. Here I can pretty easily see from the exception message that we just have forgot a required field for one of our DML statements. So this root cause analysis report will probably give us some insight into how we can resolve this with some recommendations, additional, and a conclusion at the very end. So we can edit this report, but we'll go ahead and just save it as it is. And then we'll see it's automatically linked here inside of the defect. So we get a full description in seconds here that we can define. And now, without having any insight into what we're actually testing or what we're doing here, I've created this. And so now the developer has insight into what they need to do to resolve this particular failure. We can also see if there's any other related defects that we've created already to this particular defect that has been raised here. So now I'll show you a couple of different reports and dashboards that we have out of the box with Provar Manager. So I'll switch over to our dashboards view here. And we'll go into our test executions and defects dashboard. So we can quickly take a look at a high-level overview of what are the latest test executions, what are the test case statuses, and overall who's running test cases and the number of test cases that are running every day. Of course, the number of defects that we've raised, and so on and so forth. You can also create as many filters as you want. The dashboard out of the box won't have these filters, but you can define whichever filters you want to be able to drill down further into your dashboards here. So for example, if I want to look at all of my Windows executions, I can see at a glance here what my total pass rate is for Windows, and I can see my latest results for Windows, along with any test cases that have defects. So this is the one that I actually just created a defect for. So we'll see that highlighted here. So I can see I have about a 78% pass rate for Windows. If I switch over to Mac, we'll see I actually have a slightly lower pass rate. And we have a pretty good sample size here. So we may want to look at improving how our application can run on our Mac. So this gives you some of those kinds of insights that are pretty valuable from a development perspective. We can also look at this from the browser side of things if we're focusing on testing different browsers. So let's say we want to look at Chrome specifically. This will show us, we have about an 82% pass rate for Chrome. And then if we look at maybe our Safari, we'll have a little bit lower. And then maybe as we switch browsers, we may be able to analyze that and get some insight into which browser gives us the best chance of success, which browser operating system combination gives us the best chance of success. Of course, we can look at individual test environments. Right now, we're just looking at all of our dev executions. If we look at all, of course, this will increase our sample size and we'll be able to see some additional test executions reported in there. So this is one of my favorite dashboards to kind of give you a high-level overview of how the testing is going. But if we want to drill down a little bit further, we also have a coverage dashboard that can give you a little bit more insight. So I'll go into that one here. We find our coverage. So we have our test coverage dashboard here. And this dashboard will show us some different coverage metrics that may be valuable to you as a team. So risk coverage, I already kind of outlined this one. This is really the number of risks that you defined and the number of test cases that are covered, or the number of risks that are covered by tests, rather. Of course, we can see some other different metrics that you may be familiar with, such as user story coverage, work item coverage, and metadata component coverage. All of these give you different levels of insights, and it's really how deep you want to go and what kind of information you want to get. All the data is there, right? We just need a way to kind of collate that and present that up to you. So we have the capability with that with Salesforce and with Provar Manager. So if we wanted to look at an individual report, for example, the work item coverage here, we could actually open up that specific report, see the total number of records and the test cases that they're corresponding with. Okay, so that's really the main things that we wanted to show as part of this demonstration, and how Provar Manager can give you those valuable insights and analytics into how everything's going in regards to your testing. Of course, how you can schedule test cases, what the schedules of those test results look like, how our basic reports and dashboards look, and how you can get insights into that. But aside from that, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to our slides, where we're going to have a brief Q&A. So if you have any questions, I do see that we've had a number come through in the chat, so I'll go ahead and get to those. But feel free to pop your question into the Q&A section, and we'll try to get to those. The first question that came in is, how can we get an org to learn it? Great question. So we actually do have free trials available on the App Exchange, and we'll be posting a link to that into the chat, so you can access the Provar Manager trial for 30 days, or you can try it for free from there. Can we kick off tests in other systems and report on them in Provar? Great question. The answer is yes. So, of course, we have our own cloud-based infrastructure that you can run Provar automation on, but you can also run tests on any system. So this could be scheduling things through API calls using GitHub Actions, Jenkins, Circle CI, Azure DevOps, etc. And if you've run test cases on another system and you want to import those results into Provar Manager, you can do that as well. We had a question here. How can we get hands-on practice for Provar, get trial org where we can practice it? Again, we offer free trials through the App Exchange. You can actually get a free trial org directly through there. Or you could contact us if you want a little bit more of a hands-on experience, but feel free to use the App Exchange as kind of the easiest way to get your hands on it. Okay, we had a question here. Is there external application of Provar that can be used, or all the tools built within Salesforce as a new application? Not sure I understand exactly what you may be asking here, but we do have multiple products at Provar. Provar Manager is one of them. That's our Salesforce native app. We also have a desktop solution called Provar Automation that integrates and syncs with Provar Manager for reporting and integration purposes. But you can use additional external applications for testing or project management that integrate into Salesforce or Provar Manager as well. Okay, we have a couple more questions about the trial. I think answered that one already. Someone asked, is that an R2-D2 lamp behind me? The answer is yes. Love that question. Thank you for noticing. We have a question here. How can we use Provar for automations for Salesforce testing? Great question. So Provar Manager, as I stated, is kind of focused on the reporting and integrations and being the quality hub for all of your testing needs. But our automation platform, which is a desktop solution, is primarily focused on the actual implementation of your testing. So that would be test automation, which is built for Salesforce, but has end-to-end capabilities as well. So you can get a trial version of that as well if you want to. There will be a link on screen where you can contact us if you'd like to get your hands on that. We had a question here. You mentioned Copado, which is often used for automated testing. Does Provar do its own automated testing, or does it focus on connecting to other testing tools? Great question. So Copado, of course, has their DevOps platform. They also have Copado robotics testing. Mainly what we're focused on integrating with is the DevOps platform. So we do have our automated testing solution that was built for and is kind of catered to the Salesforce ecosystem. So that's kind of the big differentiator there, is that's our target area. So we can integrate with Copado, and we do have an integration already documented and set up for that through Manager and automation. Does Provar integrate with Copado user stories? Great question. And yes, we do have a Copado plugin through the Provar Manager application that allows you to relate your Copado user stories to Provar test cases. And you can even trigger test cases on Provar through changes that you make to your Copado user stories. So that would be like if you wanted to change a user story to a certain status, such as ready for testing, you could relate test cases to that user story, and it'll automatically run those automated tests once that status has been set. There was a question here around, can we leverage Einstein with Provar Manager, maybe generate recommendations? Great question. As far as the integration with Einstein and Manager, there's not like a native one that's available today. We do have our own Provar Assistant, which is AI-based, that's embedded into the Provar Manager application that lets you ask questions as it pertains to Provar. So a lot of our documentation, our education, and all of that has been embedded in our knowledge base, has been embedded into the assistant. So that's embedded in the app where you can ask questions and get some recommendations on what to do next and things like that. Is there any alternative for cloud execution apart from Provar Grid, which can be integrated with Provar Manager? The answer is yes. Provar Grid is what we provide. And the primary reason that we provide that is it gives you a cloud-based infrastructure out of the box that you don't have to maintain. You don't have to worry about server costs, and you don't have to worry about setting it up with the Provar CLI and licensing and all of that. If you want to use something else and you have your own testing platform, your own CI platform today, we encourage you to bring that along, and we can integrate with it directly with Manager using our API integrations. So we can set up a test plan schedule to run test cases that are outside of Provar Grid. And of course, the reports will still be in Manager. So you won't lose any of the reporting capabilities or anything like that. Is Provar Manager tied to licenses for usage? Great question. So our Provar Manager licensing is by users. So if you go to the App Exchange, you'll actually be able to see the price per user per month there that's listed on the App Exchange. So you can get a greater idea of how much the cost would be for you. We do custom packages as well. So if you're interested in learning more about that, again, I would encourage you to either go to the App Exchange to kind of try it out, see if it fits your use cases, but also you can contact us if you have specific questions. Does the trial version of Provar Manager come with a diverse set of data in the org, which you can get a complete hands-on of the Provar automation in Provar Manager? Good question. So we do have different trial orgs that are available. We utilize TrialForce, so we can actually generate an org that has some sample data in it, or a fresh org that is just ready for you to use to however you want to use it. So depending on kind of how you want to go about your trial process, if you contact us, we can definitely set you up with an org that has some sample data, so you can get an idea of how Provar Manager might be used, and you can get a look into some of the reports that are available there. Okay, I think that covered most of our questions. We had a couple others that are related to the trial that we've already answered here. We talked about licensing for Provar Manager. If you're interested in licensing for Provar Automation, again, that's kind of a separate, but we would encourage you to reach out to us, and we can definitely set you up with a trial for both Automation and Manager together. And we can talk through kind of your licensing needs as an individual business or user. So I would encourage you to reach out to us. And again, I'll leave this up here now. So now we've kind of got to the end of our Q&A. I think I answered most of the questions there. This bit.ly link is my LinkedIn. So if you want to connect with me, you can either type this in or you can just search for Michael Daly and you'll see my face there. So that may be easier. But again, I would encourage you to go to the contact us page on provar.com if you want to learn more, or if you want to just get more information in regards to automation or manager, we can definitely help you. And I haven't said this yet, but if you're just interested in learning more, but you're not really sure about where you want to go, provar.me is the commitment free option, I guess you would say, where you can go and learn more about all of our products. You can learn more about testing, quality lifecycle, Salesforce testing specifically. We have a lot of free courses there available. You can sign up for free and you can learn more there at provar.me. And you can also get some certifications that you can post to your LinkedIn. So that's always a good thing. Okay, I think we've got through all the questions and I covered all that. So that concludes today's webinar. Again, thank you all so much for joining. There will be a survey post-webinar, so please stick around once we close out the webinar. Please fill out that survey. Let us know your feedback. Let us know if you'd like to learn more. Thank you all so much and have a good weekend.